Kevin, or you everybody complains about no sleep, as a parent, but you're used to that, right?
Unfortunately, yes, I'm very well versed in that.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'd prefer to get up for the little dude than put my clothes on and do what I normally do. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
No, it's actually been good though. It's been house is full of love for sure.
Right. Love
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Cool. Welcome. Good to see everyone. Um, yeah, this is just wide open. So let's just hang out and anybody has any questions, comments, thoughts about practice? Let's just have our little tea time. Anybody wants to throw anything out there, it'd be great.
You said that maybe uh, I don't know exactly what you said, but maybe things have to move up in order to relax. And I've been playing around with that in the past days. I think I had this like mini revelation when I was wrestling with my 6 year old. He's doing jujitsu, and I have no martial arts skill or whatever. But I found that in order not to hurt him, or to get hurt because he's quite strong. So I have to lean in to neutralize his force. That's probably like 101 martial arts, but for me, it was like a little revelation. And yeah, I'm using that leaning in into these areas. So it feels very counterintuitive somehow. And I felt that my like shoulders actually relax when they move up a bit, and I don't know. Yeah, so just I mean, you're saying that all the time. Like maybe it's a push door or a pull door, opposed to the other way around. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think that's what I'm up to at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah, great. Interesting. I think I don't you think that a lot of people are they're kind of just they think that like meditation is like they think meditation is when you like basically when you disengage. They think it's when you go away from what's happening. And oh, that's what I do. That's to be whatever they've heard unattached, or I'm letting go of thoughts, or this I'm not yeah, I'm letting go of whatever comes up. And actually, what they're doing often in that way is they're actually just they're just blocking their experience. They're turning their experience, they're kind of disengaging from it. So then you end up in this like feedback loop of disengaging. And you think, oh, well, I'm doing it. I'm doing practice. And so you're just kind of walking around like blocking blocking life. And you think, well, I'm kind of in control here. I can kind of be kind of I can have some equanimity with this because I'm actually not really I'm and anything that comes at me, I don't engage. I don't engage. I'm not. And and then when you see, like you said, like, oh, well, I kind of have to, when I meet it, then everything kind of changes. Then it's like, oh, the whole thing, there's something feels right about that when I'm meeting it. And I think that's really interesting. Like this whole other fullness starts to come through, really interesting. Yeah. Anybody want to chime in about that? Please go ahead.
Or I thought it was interesting and you've talked about it before, how you can kind of feel open and stuff when you're practicing, and then when you're with other people, you can't feel it the same way. And since being home, I've noticed that for sure. You know, I'll be dealing with my parents or whatever, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, I certainly don't feel it right now. And it's totally a practice to learn how to do that when you're and moving. You know, I don't feel it when I'm moving. The moment I'm walking, you know, it's kind of gone. So
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
it is interesting. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, right. I mean, right. And so then there's this, you know, again, this kindergarten, like, okay, I'm not moving, and then I'm gonna move a little bit. And do I just block everything? Do I just close down when or with people? I mean, that's really where you see it. And that's why I feel like when you see people who are really able to be with people and stay with it in this way, it's really amazing. You know, wow, like they really are. I wish there were more people like this at Sogenji right now where you've been, Shane, but like, oh, when they're with people, this whole channel's still really open. They're still really and so this kindergarten, we move a little bit. When I move, I can kind of see, oh, it's possible that I could kind of stay with that while I'm moving. And then while I'm walking, and then when I'm with people, I could actually stay with it. I could be not in a hold on to way, but just I can stay open when I'm with keep that channel all open, keep that energy moving instead of I'm with people and I just block it. I close down the hatch.
Yeah, and I think what you just said helped me realize what I do is I split it in two then, where I'm like, okay, I'm interacting with this person and I'm trying to keep it, and I can't do so. Now my mind's split and I'm not even really in the moment. So it's tricky to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
With, you know, the way you normally do everything else in life, you know, kind of like black and white, or
Yeah.
it's not obvious how you do it. I mean,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in on that also, if I could. Yeah, a lot of times I kind of feel like a broken record, and I pretty much say the same thing over and over. But I guess it's where I'm at. So, yeah, talking about like feeling it and bring it into the world. In practice, I'm like so willing to go into these places where I feel like I'm 1 second I want to punch a hole through the wall, and the next second I'm crying, and then the next second I'm in, total compassion. And I can feel that when I go out in my interactions, but it's like I don't know how to. I don't want to. I guess I'm afraid of bringing some of that rage, I guess, or sadness. Like I feel like if I really let it through, then I'm gonna either be like bawling, crying, and I could feel it right now where I could just cry, or I could, and it's just like this. I guess what I'm trying to say is, in practice, I'm willing to go. I'm willing to do that. I actually want to do that, but then I don't know how to express that in a way that's socially acceptable. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Anybody have a comment about that? Anybody have a similar feeling or?
Just that my son helped me with that kind of thing, and I think your son will help you with that.
I think, oh, oh, Michael's chiming in on the chat. But I totally know what you mean. And I think I totally understand that. And I think that's my existence too. Just being and you know, often there's this feeling like I go into practice and then I kind of blow up and then I'm wide open and I'm vulnerable and I'm so emotional. And I want to cry or I'm really angry and I think that stuff does it really does as we let that happen more and more, it becomes like just fine to be that way. And we see like as the electric wire gets bigger, then I'm just fine being kind of blown up and vulnerable and open. And I can actually be with people without it being volatile in the same way. Like I can just be with them and I can be wide open. I can be like all those emotions. And but they're not like I'm not my body isn't actually I'm not quite a slave in the same way to my body that I was, which is really how it was for me. Like I was just basically, you know, at any point I felt like I could kind of cry because I was just this pressure cooker. And that really does change as the body changes and as the energy opens up more. And actually that's really helpful. That's really helpful for people because then you're with them with all those emotions and they can feel that. And then they can feel that and they can see, oh, it's okay that I'm feeling all these things. Like that's actually so helpful compared to, the person who's like, we'll just be in control, or whatever. That's just nonsense. For this practice, it's more like I'm wide open and I'm okay. And that's like so helpful for people when they feel that you are blown up and wide open, but you're still okay. And I'd say that's much of my experiences being I didn't go, there are people who decide, well, I'll go the control route and I'm going to just make my practice smaller and smaller. And then I'll find a way of equanimity through that. And I saw like, oh no, it's the opposite. I have to go further into this unknown and this opening up. And then through that, then I can really be open with people, vulnerable in this wide open way. So anyway, that's my feeling.
I wouldn't mind adding in my own experience, I think having some sort of physical practice where I can sort of, be blown up with these emotions, but also expressing myself physically with a group of people has been really helpful. So for me, doing like a martial art practice, and when you're really feeling all these things and doing something like bag work and you're with people you trust, where you can just be like, kind of losing your mind for a little bit and just letting like all the windows open and just letting all that emotion express itself physically that way, for me has been a really helpful avenue to lose that control and not feel totally judged, or like I can't do that at my job with like a bunch of students and then look like a crazy person. So having that space for me where I can just sort of lose it and then figure out sort of okay, now where's the tapering line? Where's the place where I can share with like my students that like, I don't know what's going on in the world. And it's kind of freaky. And to show them, like you were saying, Corey, like that's okay. Like that's a fine way to exist.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you people hear me, or is it just like background noise too loud? Okay, because I can't tell. I came into this restaurant at 11:55. It was empty and quiet, and I thought, oh, I'll just do the call from here, and it's packed. Like by 12:03, after I ordered, it was packed. So here I am. Yeah, for me, how would I even say it? Like I think Corey put some boundaries on it. So not boundaries, but some spin up. Not, I don't know. He identified something in class, I think several months ago, and it's basically like almost like you said, like he's interested in pure subjectivity. And like a little light bulb went off for me. Like, oh, when I'm with other people, I use my brain to try to figure out what they're talking about, what their point of view is, and all that stuff. And what if I just like calm that down a little bit and figure it out? Figure out if I'm actually doing that without trying, right? So is that something where I can just like innately do it without trying to do it? And it's made a huge difference. I can just stay really inside myself around people a lot better. And it's, of course, it's a learning process as well. But it's like there isn't necessarily a reason to reach out. There isn't necessarily a reason to think that other people's, certainly if you're there in a relationship with somebody or in relation to somebody and you think that what they're experiencing is more important than what you're experiencing, you have to like really reach out and get that. That's usually not how it is. Like usually you can get to their experience on the inside of yours, if that's what's up. I mean, that's where it is for you. So we just like staying in kind of subjectivity. And that's really helped me. Like after the election, my family was really freaked out about it. I was just sort of like not. And I just felt okay. I just felt okay around them. I felt okay around people who were freaking out. And that's really new for me.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah. Questions, comments? Love it. Good conversations. Good to see everybody. Dozo on the questions. Hey, Bill.
I have another question. From a technical practice standpoint, why is it you think, or you've learned that the kind of putting weight down on one side really, you said it really cool today in class, like it comes like more laser like. And I do notice like one of your blogs a long time ago, you had mentioned, staying on one leg all night long. And so I had kind of played with that and over time noticed, oh, it does like channel it harder on one side if I just plant my weight down. And then today in class, and we were doing, I hadn't done the riding the tiger like that before, but it's easier to do that for a long time because you're not just putting all your weight down. And I was like, oh, it's kind of doing the same thing. And so I thought that was interesting. Why do you think it does? And what do you think the benefit of doing that is, just to?
Well, the one leg stuff comes very much from martial arts. And so like in saying like real Tai Chi, real like, internal arts there, you're not usually double weighted, and you're in one leg, and then you're using that spiraling through the body to often connect to the other arm, so the opposite arm, and so that being double weighted is usually kind of like a little bit of a they feel like you're kind of stuck because you can't really move if you're double weighted. If you're more on one leg, then you can go to the other leg. You can always go to the other leg. So there's always movement possible. So that's part of why they did that. So you're always in a possibility then, and double weight is sort of dead in that way. But I think it's interesting too. I don't know why it's more powerful. But it sure is, isn't it? It's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and I do think like those that want to be, you want to be a little crazy sometimes. I'm that animal. Like I definitely stood a lot on one leg, like stand on one leg in the garden, and outside's good if you can, and just see like what's coming through there. And it can often be much more concentrated, and it can kind of come through the leg in a different way. Um, and and noticing what it does to the upper body, I think is really interesting. Often it's contralateral. Um, and I've talked about this before. I kind of like this concept. I don't want to go into it too much because it's a little more I'm geeking out about it. But the Greeks and they're into this contrapposto. So this is in all the old Greek statues, they're on one leg mostly, and they're transferring. So if you see a posture there, well, my camera's not great, but they're often more on one leg. And so like if you see David or something or one of these old, they're in one leg. And I think it's really interesting that they came to the same conclusion that that's the more ideal posture as like this Chinese culture from forever ago, right? So I think that's really interesting that they were all kind of coming through to the same conclusion. Did Bill make an image? I can't get that through right now, but did you do one? Well, maybe Bill left. We lost him. But yeah, so that I think that one-legged posture, it's this universal thing. I really like when different cultures come up with the same thing. That excites me.
I sometimes get the sense with the one-legged postures that it's sort of how do I put this? I don't know quite what's going on with the balanced postures, but I have the feeling that maybe I'm not as balanced as I think I am. That there's like my body's up to some kind of a trick. And going into the more one-legged posture kind of doesn't let me do that. Like whatever, I don't really know what the trick is, but I feel like there's something going on, and
Yeah.
and the one-legged kind of forces me out of that.
Yeah. 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 And a lot of not to babble on about this, but a lot of the martial arts, they're based on like spirals through the body. And so that the one-legged, the spiral kind of comes through that. But I mean that Bill and Michael are here. They're both martial artists. They can probably speak to that. But yeah, I think the one leg, it really kind of hammers it in a certain way, and I really like that. I really like that.
I'll geek out a little bit about this because when we did Ryan the Tiger, and if Felipe Sensei was here, he would tell you this is Koku Utsudachi. If you look this up, it's a very classic like karate stance, especially once you said 70-30, I'm like, this is the exact stance we're doing. Like we do this in karate all the time. But the sort of spiraling thing, there's this idea we have in martial arts, and maybe it helps sort of explain the intensity in this idea of a major circle and a minor circle. So when you sort of spiral like a punch, there's the turn of the shoulder, but at the last moment there's this little minor circle that comes. I think as we turn and drop into the stance, you have this major rotation of the body, and then there's a smaller low rotation, and that tends to be where you get like we would say the kime, the focus of it. So I think there might be something sort of happening there.
That's a cool example because I never thought about the snap of the punch being that final little circle.
I think
Yeah,
maybe
I could geek about this forever, but I mean, any good boxer you see, like, the punch comes from the ground. Mike Tyson always talks about, if you're going to throw an uppercut, you sit into it, so everything, the whole body becomes the major circle. And then it all sort of spirals into that one point of impact.
Wow.
I just posted a link there. I want to go and read it because it's from an Ido Portal site, Ido Portal blog. and it's pictures of Aboriginal people around the world standing on one leg, the Bushmen, the Aborigines in Australia, other traditional people. And then the title of the Purtell link was "This is no coincidence." So I'm curious, to see, this long, prolonged standing on one leg in these hunter-gatherer societies. It'd be so. Anyway, I posted a link there for at least for the picture, and you could probably link to the actual article. But for everyone, that's worth the conversation. I do think that this one standing holds a kind of intrigue to it.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Love it. Beautiful.
One thing I'll just say structurally, right? Like, on one leg, you'll actually know if you're utilizing the ground, like if you're pushing into the ground to come up. Because on one leg, if you have weaknesses, your hip will come out, right? Like if you're collapsing, like one leg will show you, like there's a difference of giving your weight to gravity and collapsing, right? Like it's always that paradox of tensions. Like we want to drop away and give away to the stance, but we don't want to collapse like a ball to gravity, right? And if you're on one leg right away, if your hip comes out, like you'll see, and how do you prevent that hip coming out? Isn't pulling the hip back in, like it's not, it's actually pushing into the floor and going up, right? And so I think that there is something about the one leg that will quickly show you correctively, like it will correct a relationship to gravity very quickly, and your relationship to the actual like moving from the floor. And it's just good work, like anybody just to try it, like be in Wujie, pull up one leg and see what happens with your pelvis. Like, how does it swing? And again, the correction isn't trying to like grab it and pull it back, right? It's pushing into that floor. And who has this exquisitely is ballet dancers, right? Like they exquisitely really understand that you go up via that relationship of pushing into the floor, right? There is no collapsing. Like the whole idea of, it's not like a held core, right? Like it's this core, the center that is based from the floor. So anyway, a couple thoughts there. I really love this conversation.
Also, you mentioned the Greeks, Corey. They were very into beauty, not as a superficially looking niceness of things, but as an expression of the true and the good. So if something is looking beautiful, it's substantially connected to the truth in a Greek thinking. So maybe beauty is also a gateway to think about this stuff.
Love it. For the particular animal, I just would spend, hours kind of just out in the garden, curious and seeing that, what I think is going on with my body, it isn't quite right. I don't think that's quite what's going on, and seeing that there is really something bigger happening here, and standing in the garden or walking around or sitting on one leg, all that just being, what can I see? Is that a different way for me, a little different lens for me to see that, that's something's changing there? Or when you're on two legs, that other leg will kind of prevent some unwinding because you're anchored in that other leg a little. So if you're in one leg, then that the leg can really unwind in some interesting ways too. So anyway, taking time with that, if that's your thing, which for me, I was just kind of bursting to discover this. I spent many hours, with the little pond in front of me in the garden, just falling in love with that. What's really going on? Anybody, any other questions or the same? Keep going, please. Yeah. Yeah, surfing.
The unwinding thing, I know you're using it in a different way, but I remember like 15 years ago hearing about this woman that went to a body worker and she learned how to unwind her body, and all of a sudden she was spontaneously rolling on the floor and her body was having all these kind of spontaneous reactions. I'm sure you've heard of that. And when you talk about in the non-directed body movement, kind of the body moving or doing kind of something in a certain way without our conscious trying to make it happen, I'm always really curious about that because that never happens for me. And I'm always like going, am I holding myself still in some way? Because I mean, I've done a lot of standing the past 6 months, and that kind of never happens. And so I wonder what needs to be removed for that, because I've heard about people doing like having the unwinding happen a lot, and it seems like it's not some magical thing. It's something that the body can just start to let go of these things. So maybe you could riff on that, or if anybody has experience with that.
I will hand it off if people want to chime in.
Yeah, I get that a lot actually. I don't really know exactly how to say this, but a lot of times I tend to go kind of the opposite way with the non-directed, where I almost want to do more stuff, and it's not so much maybe totally natural, but I'm just like, oh, this might feel good, and I start like, I guess maybe coming from more of a yoga background, where it's like a mixture between a yoga practice and a non-directed, where a lot of times I am rolling around on the ground. I don't think that's really what non-directed is. So I kind of think of those as two separate practices, but yeah, I guess I don't really know where I'm going with this, but a lot of times, yeah, it's like, it does feel good to just like move and stretch. And I'm like, oh, that would feel good. And, yeah, I'm throwing that out there. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm saying, but two separate practices, I would probably guess.
You know, I've done a fair bit of osteopathic training just because of this interest in the body and healing and movement. And so we think of unwinding, I mean, primarily we're thinking of, well, all of the structures of the body, the fascia, the fluidics, the energetics. But one thing that I think is a really useful thing, Shane, is if you take a towel, you know, when you hold two ends of the towel and you start winding it, you know, like when we used to snap towels at each other as kids, you know, like wet towels, you wind that up. And you think about a lifetime from a baby, you know, from the birth process to our age right now, all the insults on the body that the body winds and knots and twists and holds in that fascial fluidic structure. And it's just think of all the, or take a flat blanket and just knot it and turn it and twist it in different planes, you know, and that's this sort of this pure embryonic fascia getting literally, like if you're talking about unwinding, we have to talk about the winding, right? Like it's all got it and wound up, our diaphragms are holding our breath, and it's all getting locked in that. But the towel analogy is a good one, because if you wind it up, if you hold it up in the air, you know, and let it go in its relationship to gravity, that towel will unwind, right? Like it has a memory to go back to its flat. I mean, a towel is a two-dimensional structure. Body is three or four if you consider it moving through space. But the analogy is a good one. And so I would agree, like often what stops us from feeling that is our very subtle holdings. Like we don't know how to let go to that level of a tissue unwinding. Like it's like us continuing to hold that wound up towel at two ends. That's why I like what Corey said about how 1 foot, you know, again, releases a kind of holding to allow it. The thing I would say is this is one of those good experiences. If you have a really good osteopath that works with fascia unwinding, or a really talented craniosacral therapist that has a real sense of unwinding. I mean, they teach it in the course, but not all of them do like sort of unwinding work. If you can experience what unwinding feels like, aid it by others' hands, like, and the other hands help because the osteopath or the craniosacral therapist in some sense is taking gravity away. Like they're giving you a zero gravity experience by holding your tissue out of, out of the holding or tension it has to hold. Once you feel that unwinding and the subtlety of it, then I find it's easier to show up in standing practice.
Mm.
I don't know if that's a useful, explanation, but then you can see, oh no, here it is, like it's, and you'll see like often like in my own body's asymmetries, like my usual, it does a weight shift. It usually shifts me to the left, and it's as the first gate of an unwinding. My pelvis is asymmetrical. Like it will make use of all the asymmetries in your body. And the other principle of the unwinding is it's called indirect. Like you're not trying to stretch it out. You're not trying to make it happen. The body's trying to take itself into the tension, into the whirlpool of its winding. It's winding itself up often so it can unwind itself out. Like a struck drawer, like, wooden drawers. You try to pull a wooden drawer in humidity and it doesn't come out, but you push that wooden drawer in and then it slides out easily. Unwinding's often like that.
That was a lot of awesome information, actually. And the towel analogy was really helpful. That makes sense.
Yeah, and for me, it took months before I started to feel much in terms of the non-directed. And I would not do it for very long, and I would do it lying down because it was kind of discouraging. But this changed. And it feels like now there's one process that's going on, and I never really thought about it, so I'm just going to try to describe it. So as I breathe, I get caught. Like my body gets caught in places. And so the breath goes on and I'm trying to relax. But as I try to relax, I get a different sense of what the caughtness is. And I get the sense of the caughtness sometimes as like a foreign object in myself, and sometimes as a kind of tension in myself. And I have trouble not intervening in that process. And so what I'm doing most of the time is just trying to tolerate this in a way, like tolerate this kind of what is it, like a low level breathing in my body, never really feeling right kind of thing. And if I get to a certain point of relaxation, things start to just shake randomly. Like things will just go off. But it's more of a sort of a myoclonal kind of like a jitter than it is like an unwinding. Anyway, it's just descriptive. I don't really know what it means, but it does. I feel like in like that sorting process is what is the meditation. Like that's sort of the place where I'm gaining, like I'm learning a kind of discernment about what's going on in my world and how I'm intervening. That's how I theorize about it, but I'm not sitting there theorizing about it while I'm doing it.
I had a question for Corey. Corey, in your work, have you ever worked on a newborn, just and got to work with their tissue and see both the quality of the tissue, the rapidity of the unwinding, and that massive energetic that's just looking to manifest? Like, have you had a chance to work or just on very young kids? Have you had that in your experience?
Yeah, they're like everybody's the Christ child, everybody is. This is everybody. All babies are the Christ child, they're I don't know where you are, Kevin, but the fourth trimester, they're kind of they're just like they're the Christ, it's all coming through. It's all so loud. It's all so beautiful. I don't know how old Reef is, but whatever, I don't know how long, but that 3 months is pretty wild, especially at first, how that the room is big, with that beauty and love. And but yeah, no, they're so amazing. It's such a gift to be able to be with newborns and to see how and it's also it's similar when people die. Like the room feels similar, not their bodies, but the room feels similar when people are dying. And like in terms of like this shell is sort of breaking, cracking, and then this big energy is there. Actually, it was really weird, like it. And so house here, people would start to show up when people were dying. Like the volunteers would all start to show up because they kind of like that vibe. They're kind of like it's powerful. So they'd show up when the patient was getting really close. People would start to stop by. They'd how can I be around this? You know, and it's just like that with the baby. And anyway, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, Reef is just over a month old. But yeah, it's cool, like you're saying, just watching the fluidity with which emotions come and go and states of mind. And I mean, from a full level 10 meltdown to big smiles in like that, you know, and just it's like a river just passing through with no gripping onto any of it. And it's cool, just like, you know, I sit with him, you know, just, you know, sit and yeah, it's like you can lose time in there. It's pretty cool. So really special.
Sorry, Kevin, I have to ask, because I'll be a father in a couple months. Do you literally just sit zazen with your child? Because I've been trying to figure out, you know, what practice is going to look like after that. Obviously, a big life change.
Yeah, I kind of do it all. I do a little in the mornings. I've been just holding him, and I have a little garden in the backyard, and we just do slow, like just walking, you know, and then I'll stand with him, and same thing, just it's funny what we were talking about, standing on the one leg and just doing that and kind of just feeling him. And then I'll sit zazen, and then sometimes just hold him and sit while I'm holding him. So just the practice looks different in one way, but totally the same in another, I guess.
Awesome, that's great, thank you.
Pretty cool.
I would just expect it to change a lot when your kid gets mobile.
Yeah, for sure.
Then you might try thinking about practice more as a sprint than an endurance race. You know, figure out what's the most intense thing you can do for the shortest amount of time, while still keeping your eye out. You know.
I sorry, I'm kind of geeking out on this topic, and maybe this is there, but again, I'm going to direct this back to Corey, but it is for the group. So like often unwinding when you're doing it in a treatment sense is often, most people think of it as this very gentle, very delicate, like, you know, and it is, it's a melding, you know, it's always a melding of touch and meeting that room. But often people think of it as a very, like, you know, very subtle, very gentle kind of listening, and often it is. But one thing I've noticed, and I think this relates back to our standing work, you know, with sternums, with sacrums, with pelvises, with femurs, like these big bones. If I stand over the patient and almost like say with the sternum, like almost like I'm about to do chest compressions for somebody who's at a cardiac arrest, but I'm not pumping. I just let my weight go through my arm, through that sternum, down through the table into the floor. So it's literally giving all of my weight, or not all of it, but you know, my weight to gravity through the sternum. And this puts our bodies as one, the table as one. That amount of pressure, which is a lot of pressure, often just unlocks things to start moving in really crazy ways, in a way that the patient isn't uncomfortable, right? Like it really is like this full surrendering to gravity. It's not a subtle thing. I just wondered, like Corey, have you ever had that sort of, like, again, like that pressure, like giving a pressure? And again, it's not muscular, you know, like it's just letting gravity receive it, and then seeing how that starts to unlock and move the body. Again, maybe it's a little too specific or geeking out, but I think it does relate to this relationship in practice, like really giving the full weight, how that can open up this unlocking. But it's not muscular. It's not like pushing. It's not work, right? Like it is a giving. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean, and I think I totally experience that, and often I'll kind of sometimes I'll be working with somebody and I'll be really subtle, and then I'll feel like, shit, I'm not really connecting here. I'm not
Yeah.
really I'm not really with them. Like I'm not I'm kind of staying outside of it and I'm waiting for something to happen, but I'm not really meeting them. And
Yeah.
and then I'll like, okay, I'm gonna what's the sweet spot to meet them and to really find that. And it can be very physical. There's a spectrum of whatever works. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's finding that I think is what works for me. And it's often not what I expected, or it certainly isn't what you read about in the books. You know, it's like, oh, I have to meet this right now. And I think that part is, it totally relates to our practice in terms of like whatever idea we've got of it, like I'm going to relax, I'm going to feel my body, I'm going to let go. That's all, it's all like bullshit. It has to be that I am actually feeling it. I have to feel it, and then it moves. I have to meet it and then it moves. And so we kind of go, well, I'm supposed to do it this way, and I have this template in my mind, and I'll kind of match that template. And then when I do that, nothing happens. I feel like everything's dead. And instead, when oh, I've got to be real here. And that, for me, that's what the non-directed really is about. It's about giving permission to find that spectrum of, I connected with this. I had to find it in my own way. And when I did that, something started to happen. And so I totally think it's beautiful in what you're saying, Bill, and totally relate. It's the same stuff. It's just, and then I think it is also the same thing with people, with our whole lives. Like, how can um it'd be great. I was joking my work. It'd be great if this is paint by numbers. Like, oh, well, I'm with that person. I'll just color everything will be, the threes will be blue. You know what I mean? Then when I run into a three, everything will be blue. That will be so easy. But actually, I got in real time, I have to meet this person, this situation, and I have to really become that. And I find that so interesting, actually. But yeah, it's different than what I imagine.
And this is that. I mean, you're pointing back to the article you just wrote too, right? Like about like that it's this, and I really resonated with what you wrote, right? Because it's like, I think everybody thinks that this attention is intentive, right? But it's not intention. It's not. It is. And again, I always love coming back to this notion of this kind of this curiosity that comes forth, right? Like, but I really, if you haven't read Corey's last article, like this, like I really think that this is the. I mean, it's always the same space, right? Isn't it? Isn't always coming back to the same thing, you know, in a different pointing. But anyway, I just want to. If anybody hasn't read that article yet, I think that's actually very useful to the question that Shane started us off with here. You know, like.
Thanks. Yeah.
I found for the first, geez, I don't know how long, year maybe, after I started doing a little bit of non-directed, I couldn't help, the moving. Like, as soon as Corey said, let's do a few minutes of it was like, and it was happening at other times too, not just in non-directed. I mean, not even just in like practice times or spaces. I would just like, this kind of stuff would just kind of start happening through the day. And I could, you know, if I needed to, I could stop it. But if it took a little attention or effort to make that happen. And eventually it wasn't happening quite so much. And then more recently, I've noticed that when I start to move, it's it's almost always when my attention is drifting, like when my mind has started to wander a little bit. Like that's when I start moving. And then if I sort of recenter my attention on my body, then a, there's not a need to move, or it doesn't feel like there's a need to move anymore. So it just feels like maybe there's like a little bit of a dissociative process going on there with the movement, which I don't really understand. So now I'm trying to make space for the movement if it needs to happen, but not really being careful about not making it happen, and just sort of keeping my attention on the present and kind of seeing where that takes me.
Right. Yeah. Totally. And I do think that everyone's a little bit of a different animal with this. Where we're coming from with this is it's okay if like people don't move, they don't have this stuff happen, or if they do move, and that's great too. I'm a little bit careful when sometimes I'll get some real dancer types, and they're used to going into a movement mode, and I think that's okay, and that might be their path. It might be what they need to do, but I'm a little bit, when that's what they're good at, when they're used to doing that, I'm a little bit cautious of that. And then there are people who they never have moved ever, and that's okay too. But I think that's also kind of interesting. You haven't ever moved, and maybe something is trying to happen, and maybe playing with that too. So I think wherever people come, they come from a different perspective or a different spectrum of that. Not everybody's gonna roll around crying, immediately, like me, or whatever. But anyway, so wherever we are with it, I think that's the beauty of it, actually, is exploring it and seeing, oh, this is what's happening, and whatever I'm expecting is usually not actually what's happening, and so anyway, that's the practice, is the meeting it, and the creative aspect. Yeah. I think it's interesting, Amos. That's interesting.
It was weird to notice that something that had felt so I don't know, automatic and necessary when I started, that like something changed at some point. I was like, oh, there's something else going on here right now. Or I like got into this mode of like, well, my body's moving, so I'm just gonna let that happen, and I'm just gonna kind of check out and let my body do its thing. Yeah, I don't know, it's weird.
Right, and then maybe sometimes it's like on story on the building, on the third story, this is what's happening, but that's my way of actually ignoring what's happening on the second floor. I want to feel what's on the second floor, so I'm gonna ride around on the third story here.
Yeah, I guess it got really intense at the last session I went to, where I kind of like I had to do kind of non-directed for all my yaza, like for a couple of reasons, but one, just like I just had like crazy stuff going on through my body. But also I think like standing outside in the dark, like not really, like I couldn't really see anything either, and I think that made it really easy, and I was exhausted, and it's kind of made it easy to kind of get into this kind of real fuzzy place, and just like my arms are doing stuff, and I'm just kind of checked out.
Right. I do think too that it can be worth at times, maybe the subconscious mind is trying to show us something too. And I don't know about, I'm not saying do this every time, but at times maybe my mind is wandering, it's doing this stuff, but actually there's something else coming through when I let all that happen. So I don't, I think a lot of people, they feel like, okay, if my mind is moving or wandering a little bit, then it's bad. I'm not doing my practice. I'm not really with it. And I think often people really need to, and when they're relaxing, often their mind will wander and they'll maybe even fall asleep a little bit. And then they'll wake up and it's like they're right with it, but they couldn't quite get there. That, that sign, you can't get there from here, and it can be like that too, where this unconscious was trying to birth through, and we might not be able to get there by often people think they get there through control, and that might work sometimes, but often it's that something's coming birthing through this, that I maybe I leave a little space for that, or I see, oh, even though my mind was wandering, I just went through something really interesting. It wasn't really even it was still happening, even though I was moseying about the food or some person that's sexy or whatever, who knows, you know what I mean? So I think that's all interesting,
Yeah, Corey, I'm glad you said that, because I do that all, like, that happens to me all the time. I'll, flip over, I'll start to think about something for a second. It's totally irrelevant. And then, like, when I come back, I'm starting from zero. And I'm starting from where, like, maybe during that time when I was off, maybe that's what my system needed. It needed to not be watched for a second. It needed to, like, just like right itself. And my observation, which I tend to think is a great thing, maybe it isn't sometimes, so anyway, I'm glad to hear you say that, because this does happen all the time. Like, I space out for a second and I come back and like, oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
it.
Right. And then we get into the idea, this isn't even about me. It's not even about me. Whatever I'm thinking about, whatever I think I'm doing here, it's actually not the main thing. So maybe I thought I was doing this, but actually there was something that was happening through that was actually the main thing. And that's actually what I have to offer people. It's not Corey's great ideas. That's all JV, you know what I mean? Junior varsity. Yeah, so I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I think most teachers can't say that, because it goes against what they're trying to tell people,
Right. Oh, interesting. Then there's us getting just wrapped up in our mozo too, and that's another thing, obviously. But yeah,
Yeah, I feel it's like we talked about the tandem being elusive, or that we in the beginning can see it out of the corner of the eye, and I feel it's quite similar to that sometimes I can be on the thought train, but I feel the other stuff is happening, and I can allow it to happen more if the thoughts are still going. And I just thought it's kind of looking after a kids playing and maybe doing some dangerous stuff. If you're looking straight on and trying to control, don't, you're not really looking after it in a, I don't know, nurturing way. You have to like kind of look away, but still be checking the scene. So that just came to mind. So that way of looking helps me.
I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think a wild aspect, unexpected aspect of that is then when we like go do something, like when we're raking or something, you it's like 100% is raking, and So I think that's interesting. So we're kind of, it's maybe what we think is what we think is our focus or our mind or unification. Maybe we're again, like I try to say about the body. We thought this was the body, but actually that's not quite what the body was. And I think it's the same with our process. Like it's so controlling it and trying to make it be something. I don't think that's the big the deep route. So so I think we that's why I think the physical stuff is good because it'll show us, oh wait, I'm actually like, I feel like every cell is doing this right now. And even though maybe I wasn't what I thought about it wasn't quite what I had imagined with my practice, with my sitting, with my standing, all that. So anyway, I think that's interesting to chew on. Thank you so much, everybody. Really great conversation. Really great. Anything before we go?
Right, if I could just say one last thing where you're saying with just what you were saying, I guess in Zen, right, they have this notion of that shout, the katsu, is it like a shout? And the Bushmen, when I danced and worked with the Bushmen, they have also the shout that comes forward, and they talk about sharing a nail or sharing an arrow. But but this notion of something just wanting to move and come through the body, and it's such a weird thing because it's more akin to something like vomiting, like that you don't have vomiting. We all know what vomiting is, so you're like, oh, okay, like, or a sneeze, right? But it's interesting when something comes through you, and like you said, your head can be, doesn't matter where your head is. Like my head could be in any kind of fantasy, and the minute I sneeze, I'm actually sneezing, right? Like it has nothing to do with the fantasy of wherever my mind has wandered. And it's just really interesting in a similar kind of way when these things come forward, like all of a sudden a shout will come forward, like it literally like leaps from your gut and out of your mouth, or or emotion or something. It's I don't know. I just find that these things, you're like, and you literally like it has a mind of its own. It's expressing itself in a way that isn't, it doesn't matter if I'm in the room or not, if I'm attentive to it or not, like it's just coming forward, you know what I mean? Like it's there it is, like it's, and I just think that's, yeah, there's something that's I mean they're just such simple things, but they're just, I just know, I just find they're just so dang mysterious, like there it is, just, it's not intentful, right? It's not like I'm going to shout at you now, or like in karate we have kiai, but it's like I'm going to do this kiai. It's not that, right? Like it is just this thing that presents and comes forward, and then it's gone, right? There it is, and then it's gone. And so I think that there's just something just so absolutely remarkable in all of that.
Thank you. Great. Appreciate it. All right. Wonderful, everybody. Appreciate it so much. I'll be here at 1 my time. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.